After a week-long trip in Las Vegas and Los Angeles playing big games at the Wynn Hustler Casino Live, I am back here in South Florida. We're here at the Harrah's Casino in Pompano Beach for a private 5-10 game. I have a lot of big hands to share, so let's get right into the action. First hand, there's a couple calls for $10. I'm in the small blind with 4-3 suited. I call for $5 more, and we go 5 ways to the flop. Ace, 4, 5, 2 clubs, we flop a pair and a straight flush draw. I check, big blind checks, middle position player bets 40, button player calls 40. I decide to bump it up here with my combo draw. I've got a pair, I've got a flush draw, I got a straight flush draw. I make it $150 to go. Early position limper makes the call, and the button makes the call for $100 more. After raising the flop and getting 2 calls, I'm definitely hesitant to put more money in the pot, but on the Jack of Diamonds turn, I feel like it could be a good spot to continue to bet here, and I decide to go with a blocker type sizing on the turn. I just make it $200. The reason I go this sizing is that if my opponents just call this $200 bet, that will mean that the best hand they can really have here would be a 1-pair hand, or they're drawing to straight draws or flush draws, versus this $200 bet. If either of my opponents has a 2-pair or a set, they'll be raising this up. While the early position player calls 200 and the button calls as well. Not exactly the outcome we wanted. We were hoping either one of them or both of them would fold, but we do have outs. Deuce of clubs one time, not this time. 7 of spades, we are left here with a pair of 4s. We missed our straight draw, missed our flush draw, got 2 calls in the flop, 2 calls on the turn. Should we give up or should we continue to fire? Now, if we go back to the turn play when I bet $200, feel like the best hand my opponent's going to really have here is just a weaker ace-x hand. Feel like one of them has an ace-x hand and the other one has a busted flush draw. I don't want to check and lose to a hand like ace-6 or ace-8 or ace-9, so I decide to fire out a triple barrel bluff. I make it $800. I'm mostly worried about the player in middle position. I feel like the player on the button had a flush draw that he missed, so I'm really hoping the middle position player who bet the flop, called my raise, called a turn, will just fold out a medium ace-x hand. And after about a minute of thinking, the middle position player does fold. Maybe we'll win this pot until the button goes all in for $1,100.
Last hand at this level.
200 back, right? Yikes, that one did not go as planned, and as you'll see throughout this session, that becomes somewhat of a trend. In this hand, I put on the $25 button straddle. Small blind raises to 80, big blind calls 80, cutoff player calls 80. We have an easy call here with pocket 6s on the button. Go 4 ways to 9, 6, 4, 2 hearts, flopping middle set for us. Small blind initial raiser checks, big blind checks. Cutoff player puts out a bet of $325 on this board with a set super wet and connected. I'm going to raise it up right away. I make it $900 to go. All the other players fold back over to the cutoff, who makes the call for $900. This cutoff player is the same player who caught me bluffing earlier with 4-3 of clubs. This is obviously good for my image because this time I actually have it. I have a set of 6s, time to bet big on this king of diamonds turn card. He checks over to me. I throw out $1,050. I feel like he can have a lot of hands here on the flop when he bets out and then calls my raise. He could have some overpairs like 10s, jacks, queens, some 9x of diamonds hands, some straight draws, some flush draws as well. So we're going to try to charge all those hands, but not give him too bad of a price to call. We do have a set. We're way ahead of basically every single hand he has here, and he does put in the call. Huge pot brewing here, over $4,000 in the middle, going to the Jack of Hearts on the river. This does bring in the front door flush. Action over here on the cutoff, and he decides to lead out for all of his chips. The pot's over 4,000. I look down at my stack. It looks like I got about 800 left, so I just snap call. I show pocket 6s, and he shows ace queen of hearts for the nut flush. The best hand possible. Oof, my God. And we're getting stacked here with a set of 6s. I then realized that I had a little bit more in my stack. Looks like I had around $1,300. Nasty spot, getting stacked, set versus a flush. This day is not starting out too hot. Some of you may think that I could hero fold the river when the flush got there and my opponent went all in, and I would mostly agree with you, except in this game, it is full of crazy players doing wild things. I feel like with the pot size, with the amount of money that I had left, I just have to call with a set of sixes. If he's got a flush, he's going to beat me. However, this player in the cutoff is probably not bluffing for his entire stack. When the flush gets there on the river, I guess I could have hero folded a set. But either way, we lose a big one. I reach into my pocket, grab $5,000 more of chips. Let's try to get it back. About 90 minutes has gone by since losing with a set of sixes. I fold a lot of hands before looking down at pocket tens. The pre-flop action in this hand is pretty wild. Under the gun raises to 50. Under the gun plus 2 3-bets to a min sizing of $100. A low jack player, action player, makes a call for a $100. And I decide to just call here in the cutoff with pocket tens. Back over here to the under the gun player who initially raised to 50, and he bumps it to $500. Wow, okay. Under the gun plus 2 initial 3-better folds, but the action player here in the low jack makes the call. I'm getting a great price here with pocket tens. I have over $5,000 in my stack. If I could hit a set, I could win a massive pot. Can't get my money back by folding. So I make the call for $500, and just like that, over $1,600 in the middle with pocket tens. The flop is 6-3-10 with a flush draw. Top set for us, 3 ways in a 4-bet pot. Initial raiser puts out a bet of $800 before the action's over here on the low jack player who decides to go all in. He shoves all in on this flop for over $3,500. I'm stuck $5,000 plus on the day. This is what poker dreams are made of. You flop a set in a huge pot, and your opponent jams all in. I'm not playing around. I re-jam all in for my stack as well. Under the gun folds, and just like that, $10,000 in the middle. I tell my opponent I have a set. He tells me he has a flush draw. We always go twice at this game, so we've got to hold over $10,000 in the middle. Let's see this run out. First board, Queen of Clubs. Flush gets there and we do not boat up on the river. The first board is not for us. The second board, we do make a full house. Whew. Thankfully, we're going to be chopping this one up against Jack Deuce of Clubs. What a sick $10,000 pot this was. Top set on the flop, losing to a flush on the top, full house on the bottom. I guess it could have been worse. We could have ran out this pot one time and I could have lost. Or, I guess the flush could have gotten there 2 times. I will admit, when I saw the first Queen of Clubs on the top board, I thought, wow, I think I'm going to lose both of these runouts. Pretty tilting spot. I was in a great spot earlier with pocket sixes versus a flush draw and lost. And now I was in a great spot again with top set versus a flush draw and lost again. Things are kind of tough so far this session. We do get a little bit of profit in this hand from the under the gun player, but it could have been, it should have been much more. Over the next hour, I win a couple small to medium-sized pots. My stack has now grown to 7,500, which looks great, except I'm in the game for around 12 or 13,000, so I'm still stuck about 5 dimes on the day. Before I get dealt in Ace-King offsuit, I raise to $75. The button 3-bets me to $200. Small blind calls $200. Big blind calls $200. Ace-King 4-bet mandatory here. I make it $1,100. They all fold and we take down over $600 pre-flop here with Ace-King. In this game, I try to get in there and see a lot of flops, so when there's a call for $10, I over limp with King 6 suited, and we go 4 ways to 10-8. For all hearts, I flop a flush. Finally, things are turning around for me this session. We flop the second nuts, multi-way. I bet $30. Button calls $30. Now the small blind check raises to $75. Interesting spot. Looks like he's got around $1,500 or so left in his stack. I could re-raise again, but I feel like that would just be a little bit too strong. He could easily have a top pair here, a 2-pair hand. Maybe he's got a worse flush. Don't want to scare him away with another raise on this flop, so I make the call, and the button calls $75 as well. We're still 3 ways to the Jack of Diamonds on the turn. I still have the second best hand you can have on this board, and the small blind continues for $250. I make the call for 250, and this time the button folds. We're heads up to the river of the 6 of spades. Small blind continues for a $500 bet with only $600 left in his stack. I'm going to spring the trap now. Second nut flush. I am all in. Small blind takes a second, looks back at his cards, and then calls. I proudly show my king high flush and get shown ace 3 of hearts for the nut flush. Flush over flush on the flop. As if this session couldn't go any worse, I flop the second best hand, and I'm up against the only hand that beats me, the ace high flush. I lose $1,100 here on the river, over $1,500 in this hand. Man, today is just not my day. Man, I feel like an abandoned puppy. I'm tired getting beaten down, kicked and bruised. I just cannot get anything going in this session. 1 step forward, 3 steps back. I'm still stuck over $5,000, but this game is wild. I could get it all back in one hand. It's happened before. I raise queen 10 of spades in the button and the straddle calls. Heads up to queen 10-10, flopping a full house. Can't lose this one, right? Well, when she checks, I trap and check this one back. Turn card jack of clubs, my opponent checks again. I bet out $100 before the big blind now raises me to $300. Obviously a great spot for us. We have a full house and we're getting raised to $300. Definitely feel like she could have a straight here with king 9, possibly 8-9, maybe even ace king. Could have a 10 for trips. I don't want to call this $300. I want to put more money in this pot. So I 3-bet here on the turn to $1,000. Back over to my opponent, who doesn't think for too long and calls $1,000, going to the river for a spades. She checks over to me. There's over $2,000 in the middle. I think this is a spot we should be betting big. Once she calls my $1,000 3-bet on the turn, I put her on a straight, possibly a worse 10x hand, maybe even jack 10, so I throw out $2,300 river bet here. Back over to my opponent, who I do have a ton of history with. I've been playing with her for about 5 years, and one thing's for sure, she does not like to fold. After I put out this bet, my opponent takes about 20 or 30 seconds, and then she starts thinking and talking to herself out loud. She starts saying, maybe we're chopping? Do we both have a straight? Do you have a full house? Do you have me beat? She then says out loud that she's got ace king of clubs, and that she was going for a royal flush draw on the turn. I'm thinking to myself, this is an easy call for her. We're going to get paid over $2,300 more. But eventually, after 2 minutes of thinking, she says, I think you have a boat, and she folds the nut straight. Wow, we just got completely owned here. She makes a great fold. We lose out on $2,300. Our night is just getting worse and worse and worse. Definitely a rough session for us. Every time we make a good hand, it seems like we lose, and when we do have our opponent beat, they do not pay us off. It looks like we are not getting back to even for this session. We're going to have to book the L. After 9 hours of playing, the game ends up breaking. I eventually rack up my chips, head to the cage, and cash out for the night. Well, that was a pretty miserable session. Right off the bat, losing 4-3 of clubs, $1,000+, flopping a set of sixes, losing to a flush, flopping top set of tens in a 4-bet pot, and chopping that one up versus jack deuce suited, losing king high flush versus ace high flush, and finally making a full house and not getting paid off the maximum when my opponent hero folds a straight on the river. To be honest, one of the most miserable sessions I've had for a very long time. One of the sessions where I've ran really bad. I just didn't pick up hardly any cards over 7 hours, and when I did make a hand, I either lost or I chopped or I didn't get paid off. Pretty bad, pretty miserable. However, so far this year, I've had a really good year when it came to upswings, winning since January 2023 has started. Been on a huge upswing, have been having some very good months. Of course, these kind of downswings are going to happen. I only lost $4,600, which I would say is a win. When you're running this bad and you're losing huge pots like that, I could have easily lost $10,000. So to lose only about 5K is not too bad. Got to think of all the good days when these bad days come in. I'm sure all of you guys have dealt with this before. You get your aces cracked, stacked. You flop 2 pair, you lose to a set. You flop a set, lose to a flush. You flop a flush and lose to a bigger flush. It's pretty nasty. It's the dark side of poker. It's the side of poker that nobody really wants to talk about too much. It's the side of poker that no one wants to experience, but we all experience this from time to time. We get coolers, we get bad beats, and it makes you appreciate the times when you're running good. I know it definitely helps me whenever I think about those times when I cooler people and I win the max. I try to think about that time when I'm running like shit like I did tonight. We're gonna be back at the felt though. We're gonna get this money back. It'll be okay. Get some sleep now. Taking the dogs for a walk. It is hot, humid out here in Florida. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Please like, please comment down below and subscribe. Almost to 60,000 subscribers. I'm getting there day after day. The subscriber count is growing. Please share to your friends, your other poker friends, and help me get to 60K. Next video is a fun one. It's at Seminole Hard Rock. It's more of a vlog style video. Got some big exciting hands for that one. That'll come out 2 days after this. But that's it for this one. Until next time, I'll see ya.